you very much. Well, I decided that I would treat this evening as an informal expression of my love for Maurice, which we all share, great love for Maurice. But it begins, of course, with that awful moment when one had visited Maurice's house, and the discussion would move to some area where one wasn't entirely expert, and one would hear this word, "Haven't you read so-and-so?" And it was an awful moment in mind, because not having read so-and-so would be, on the one hand, a deflation of one's own balloon, but on the other hand, exactly what Maurice wanted to hear. Because what he wanted to do was tell you, in great detail, and pulling down various volumes, he would then give one precisely what he wanted to give you. In other words, as Michael said, Maurice loved being the center of attention. His own attention as well as everybody else's. And that was one of the great delights. The other thing that always strikes me about Maurice is that he was prepared to change his mind, which is extraordinary in somebody like that, but he was. When I first said to Maurice about 15 years ago, "Maurice, I have read your poems in some way for reason, and I believe that you are a great poet," he said, "Nonsense. The muse left me when I was 26. At which point I said, "Well, I still think they're great poems." Came back to it a year later, got the same response. Came back 3 years later, got the same response. Then I was lucky enough to marry Lucy, who's Lucy Collins in the back row there. And Lucy is a critic of 20th century Irish poetry. And Lucy read the poems, and she said, "This is wonderful stuff." Next time the two of us were with Maurice, Lucy said, "Maurice, I think your poetry is really wonderful, and we would love to do an edition of it." Since he was being addressed by a woman, not a man, his immediate response was, which meant yes. And the result is, I think, a book which is going to last for a long time. I believe that Maurice's poems are not only really significant in themselves as a reflection of a particular moment in Irish writing in the 1940s, but I think, and Lucy's written an extended essay as an introduction to them, I do believe that she has placed them in a context which gives us something really significant about Maurice, because he was not just the writer that he wanted to be on his passport as a writer of prose, but a great poet, and a poet whose work I think is going to last. I'm going to read you one poem later on, but a short bit of the poem. But he was also a fantastic prose writer, and he was very proud of his prose. About 6 or 8 months before he died, Vincent Woods did an interview with him. I don't know if any of you heard it on RTE, but I hope that it will be repeated. Wonderful interview in which Maurice was able to expand on all his qualities, which he was very happy to do, and particularly when it came to prose. And he said, and he's absolutely right, that he thought that he was a prose writer of elegance, and he was absolutely right. In fact, I think probably when we look back on prose writing from Ireland in the 20th century, Hubert Butler and Maurice Craig are going to be two of the people whose writings we really look at. Because Maurice had this extraordinary ability with prose, which is reflected in poetry, but particularly with prose as well. The ability not only to write elegantly, but to speak elegantly. Those of you who remember Maurice's speaking to us, not only would a sentence start eloquently, not only would all the sub-clauses be carefully enclosed before one came to the main clause, but within that main clause, the main verb would hit you like a ton of bricks at the right moment, and the sentence would be ended elegantly and would be part of an elegant paragraph. In other words, he could speak in a way that was musical, and also, it seems to me, a way that gave to the English language a kind of quality that is increasingly difficult to find. And I think we'll look back on Maurice's prose and with great delight. And is there a better description of Ireland than the beginning, the wonderful beginning of Dublin 1660 to 1860, where he describes the arrival of the Duke of Ormond. The book is downstairs. If you haven't got it, get it. The book is downstairs, and it is one of the great descriptions of Ireland in the 17th century. And indeed, in all Maurice's books, you have this sense of a love of prose. Not only this, but a mischievousness about it. Those who've got the photographs book, which again is downstairs, and I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I do recommend it. Wonderful book on photographs, of Maurice's photographs. He says there's an elegant photograph, a beautiful photograph of a house, whose name I've forgotten, somewhere in County Meath. And he says in the caption underneath, very naughtily, you will note how the trees have disposed themselves elegantly. He's a rogue. The trees didn't dispose themselves at all. Maurice went around with his camera and he got exactly the right perspective. And I'm no expert in photography, but I do believe that Maurice was one of the great photographers. And those of us who have ever used his work in the Irish Architectural Archive, like Eddie and Freddie and all the others, many others in the room, and who know his photographs, I mean, not only are they great photographs of buildings, but they're great photographs in themselves. And why are they great photographs of buildings? Because the man was an engineer as well. He was an autodidact. He taught himself almost everything. The only thing that Maurice ever was taught was English literature. Strange but true, he used to say. The only time he ever had classes in anything, actually come to think of it, in Trinity doing a PhD, he wouldn't have classes at all. Nobody have an Oxford, probably in Shrewsbury he had classes, but otherwise he taught himself. Why did he teach himself engineering? Because he was fascinated by how things worked. He wanted to know how structures stayed up. And I must say, so often when you're talking to Maurice, he'd take out a piece of paper, and he'd take out a pencil, and he'd start drawing, say, you know, pressure here, and you realize that's where the boats come from downstairs. He knew how to construct things, he knew how to make things that worked, and things that were beautiful, because the sense of beauty was linked to his understanding of how things work, which is why a building like this delighted him so much, and which is why when you have buildings which have been well restored, he praised them, and buildings which have been, excuse my joke, he would say so in the margins. Those margins are wonderful. In other words, we have somebody who had a tremendous aesthetic sense that was based on a clear understanding of how things work. Language, buildings, bridges, everything, including aeroplanes, which is why he wouldn't fly. I think I will leave that sentence there.